theyeshiva.net.
We're up to page 131, Daf Samach Vav, Parshas Beshalach. Okay, we're the last paragraph. I once heard from the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said that he asked his father-in-law, the Rayatz, whose yahrzeit is today, why in Chabad they say Tachron on a yahrzeit. But the Polish Chassidim, every yahrzeit, you don't say Tachron, some already a month before, a month after, a year before, a year after, a week before, a week after. Yahrzeits, it's like, and Baruch Hashem, every day there's a yahrzeit from a tzaddik. And if it's not a tzaddik, at least it's a shvigas yahrzeit is another reason. Whatever. So there's always reasons for not tachma. So he said that his father-in-law answered him, Wenn is noch da, sag gute Zeit zu sich ausbetten. He says, the best time to say I'm sorry is a yahrzeit. He says, when you have a better time to say tachma. Why did he not say tachma? By mincha? Yeah. I don't know. I never understood that. After sunset, I understand. Nighttime is not a time of tachnum because it's a time of din. The middle of the day, I don't know.
It's because usually mincha is later, so that it just carries over when you daven earlier.
I'm not sure why early minchas don't have tachnum.
Right, just people are used to not saying. That's what
I don't know. Okay.
I mean, you should technically say.
Of course, you should say tachnun every day.
Early.
It's
I'm
part
saying
of davening.
if you're not davening that late.
It's a beautiful thing. I don't know what people have against tachnun. It's one of the nicest things. Its ability to be accountable, to take accountability for your life, to say I'm sorry. It's a beautiful thing. Imagine a couple would have a ritual every day for 6 minutes. They discuss what the mistakes that they made. It would be a wonderful thing for a marriage. No? Every day the husband would say, not today, it's the yahrzeit of the shviga, not tomorrow. That's what we always, not today. Okay, Shabbos, you don't do it. Yom Simcha, you don't do it. I'm saying, I don't know what people have against tachna so much. It's a very nice thing, tachna. So if you listen to the words, it's very nice. Kizavnu, latznu. You think about the times that you lie, the times that you're cynical, the times that you betray. It's a very good meditation, tachna. And it's also interesting that God, He likes it, twice a day. It's like, I'm good, yeah. In other words, it's the idea that making mistakes is part of being human. That's why we institute that the chatchilah is a time to say, I'm sorry. You should say, no, we're all perfect. Why are we saying, I'm sorry?
So someone can admit.
Huh? That's the problem. The problem is not that you make mistakes. The problem is... the day I got engaged, my brother gave me a shmuas. I have a wise brother. So he told me, he said, I just want to tell you one thing. Don't try to be perfect, he says. I know you won't be. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You know nothing about how to be a husband, nothing. You're going to do everything wrong. This is a brother's encouraging words. He says, the only thing I say to you is don't be perfect, just be accountable. When you make a mistake, don't run away. Don't run away physically and don't run away emotionally. Just be accountable. Don't be perfect, just be accountable. That's tachnun. Don't be perfect, be accountable.
Especially according to one of your rules that we say because we blame God too.
Yeah. It's a pinchas karitza. Ashamnu, yeah.
Yeah, so has to do that. Maybe it's to do the similar thing as sitting in the sukkah at the end of sukkahs. Like we said here, as soon as you give license sometimes not to say tachman, then all of a sudden they're trying to get a tachman every single time. That's what the behind others.
Yeah, that's Rabbi Soloveitchik's word. Yeah, why Shmini Atzer's got abolished. Okay. Tomorrow morning we're going to have the regular shiur, okay? Tonight is going to be a big farbrengen in the tent at 7:30. Everybody is invited, also for women and children, with music and good food, Forshay style. But tomorrow, schedule is normal. The Gemara and also the Chassidus and the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, let's continue here with page 131. Page 131, Wem schläft mitten Tag. The last paragraph, Samach Vav, the first column. V'hine yesh oid b'chinas lechem. V'hine yesh oid b'chinas lechem, sh'nikra lechem in hashamayim. Till now we discussed lechem in Aretz, and now we move on from lechem in Aretz to lechem in hashamayim. There's the bread from earth and there's the bread from heaven. V'hainu lechem shel haman, and this was represented by the bread of the manna, which is of course the story of Parshas Beshalach, which is the connection between this Maimer about Lechem Mishnah and Parshas Beshalach. So he finished with Lechem in Aretz, and now he goes off to Lechem in Hashemayim. Let's remember what was the summation. What's Lechem in Aretz? Lechem in Aretz is the bread that we eat from the earth. Literally, it means the food that we obtain on earth, whether it's bread, and bread is also a euphemism, as the Gemara Chazal say, for all types of foods. Lechem is like the staple food, the symbol food. And therefore, lechem represents all tzarchei suda, all foods that a person eats. So lechem in aretz means the food that comes from the earth. Literally, the grain, the fruits, the vegetables, or even animal products. But the animals eat grain. So they're also dependent on the earth, and they're also from the earth. They're also connected to the earth. Toitzei haaretz. What's the concept of lechem in aretz? On this he explained at length the whole concept of toyu and tikkun. That the animal represents the primal energy of life, which is very, very intense, very ferocious, one-dimensional, exclusive, and very, very powerful and extreme. And that's what primal emotions are like. That's the animal even in the human being. Animals have one specific nature, and they don't deviate, and they don't negotiate it, and there's no diplomacy, and there's no compromise. And this is the animal in the man, and the animal that we see in the jungle. As he says, the animal has no hiskalulus, no integration. Every min, every species has a teva bifnei atzmai. In the lashon of the Balatanya, it has its own contained, powerful nature, and it does not negotiate, compromise. I am who I am. And that's the primal instinct of the animal. Again, the animal in the human being and the animal in the world. That's the world of Tohu. And it generates, it begins, it commences, not generates, it originates. It originates in what's known as the world of Tohu, the world of chaos, where there was infinite energy, very intense energy, but ultimately there was a shvira. There was a breakage over there, which is what happens with primal emotions, that if they're not harnessed and they're not directed, they create terrible collisions in life. From one midah against another midah, from one person against another person. Because everything is so extreme, everything is so real. But here, realness actually has a tremendous failure because there's no compromise. Nothing gets diluted. Then there's the world of tikkun, shema, aleph, yud kei vav kei, adam versus behema. The world of tikkun versus shemban, which is ban begematria behema, ma begematria adam. And here, it's a world of compromise, a world of structure, a world of negotiation, a world of restrictions, a world where things are more limited in kalim, and therefore the most important thing is a world of iskalulus. There's give and there's take, there's integration, there's the element of bittul to the Ein Sof, which is the mila of tikkun, and therefore it recognizes that I'm part of the picture, but I'm not all of the picture, and all of Gashmius is a product of Toyu. And the concept of eating food is that the Adam confronts the world of Toyu. The Adam confronts the primal world of Toyu, which represents the animal that he's eating, or even the food, the vegetables, whatever the person is eating. Of course, when you're eating animal products, the Toyu is much more intense, because you can't compare the ferociousness of a behemoth to the ferociousness of a plant. You can't compare a bull to a peach. But both have the common denominator that they're products of Toyu, because the definition of Gashmis, it's a product of Toyu, because this is a non-cohesive world. It's a primal world. It's a world in which you don't see integration, you don't see synthesis, and you don't see infinity. It's a world in which everything is on its own. Survival of the fittest, Leviathan. And therefore, the etzem definition of Gashmis already has to do with Toyu. But of course, there's things in which Toyu is more expressed, less expressed. But the confrontation with food, eating is not just a meal. Every time you sit down or you stand up to eat, it's an encounter of two worlds. In other words, eating is an experience. Chazal never recognized fast foods. If you learn Gemara, you see how they treated food, always with a yishuv hadas. You sat down to eat. Brachas, so many, if you learn Hilchas Brachas, they're very complicated Hilchas Brachas. A lot of it has to do with das, right? Do you still have das to eat? Do you have now das to eat? There's a whole simon in Shulchan Aruch, where is it? Kufay and Zayin, I think. Or Chaim Kufay and Zayin. So it discusses, if I finish the meal, and I said, let's bench. Let's bench. And now my wife brings out a new dessert. Do I have to make a new bracha or not? I already made a bracha on the cake. I have to make a new bracha. The problem is, once you are mesiach daitoi from eating, so now the new food, you have to make a bracha. So what's called hesach hadas? If I said, let's bench, is it hesach hadas? If I brought mayim achronim, is it hesach hadas? If I picked up the cup, yeah. So we go through the different things. So I once asked a big Rav, I said, people always, at the end of a meal, say, okay, let's bench. And then food comes. So he says, you have to understand, we live in a generation, there's no das, b'chlal. It's not called das. The Chazal believed when somebody said, let's finish the meal, they meant it. Today, when somebody says, let's finish the meal, they don't mean it. They're going to see something tempting in front of their eyes, it's all over. So he knows, nobody means what they said. It's not a gather of das. It was not a bad observation. In other words, it's not a serious conviction, let's finish the meal. I'm bored, so let's finish the meal. The moment you'll stimulate me with some more poison or sugar, the meal is not over. I don't really have what to do. I'm not in control of my life. The food is in control of my life.
If you don't have real das, then the bracha is not a bracha either.
Okay. Ein echanami. But in other words, his point is, if when you yourself say the meal is over, you don't mean it, it's fine. You don't mean it. You have to mean what you say.
You have das to stop.
Yeah, that's not called das. Yeah, it main das. The Gemara says it main das havdullah menaya. That's why havdullah is an atachayin aladam das. So the Hoiben Amaisa, but the Bala Ilula of today, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, was a big smoker. Like in his times, people smoked, and they smoked socially. Everybody smoked. So he was here in America. He escaped the Nazi-occupied Warsaw in 1940. He came here in March, Tes Adar Sheni Tov, settled in New York. And so that's when they really started to find out about the damages of nicotine, tobacco for the lungs. So he had a doctor who came to visit him. And he said that he had a lot of health problems, very serious health problems. And he said, with all the discoveries recently, I want to suggest that you have to slow down on your smoking, quit smoking. 1940. He's sitting in his office. It was on 770 Eastern Parkway on the second floor. That's where he moved to. So the doctor's talking and explaining him everything. In the middle of the conversation, the doctor takes out a cigarette. Takes out one. Of course, he gives one to the Rebbe, and he takes one for himself, and then he takes a match to light up. That was the derech. It was like today, a cup of water. Yeah, you take, I take. I mean, that was part of social etiquette. Social etiquette. You took out a cigarette, you gave it to the person. So the Rebbe looks at him and he says, "What's this?" He says, "It's a papyrus. It's a cigarette." So he says, "Ich reiche nicht. I don't smoke. I don't smoke." So he's looking at him, "You don't smoke?" It's like a joke. I'm coming here to explain to you, you have to stop, you have to quit, you have to slow down. He smoked a lot. He says, till you came, I smoked. You explained to me that it's damaging. Ich reiche nicht. I don't smoke. And that was it. He never had another cigarette. Then he didn't take a cigarette. The doctor was looking at him and was like, okay, there's a lecture and then there's implementation of the lecture. And that could take 7, 9, 20 years, right? That's because we don't really have control over our lives. We don't have control. But you told me it's damaging. I believe you that it's damaging. It's over. I don't smoke. That's a type of control that's very profound. Because that's when you could begin to live, actually. You make decisions. A decision is a decision. And you have a compass. Basically, you run your life. Nothing else runs your life. That's a very profound quality that you could, at least a possibility to think about, to live into, that quality. But that takes a lot of toikef hadas, conviction, and also a certain confidence. Like, you're in control of your life. You're really in control of your life. Most of us, we're like victims to circumstances, always reactive, rarely proactive. It's like, yeah, we'll go here, I'll go there, I'll go here, I'll go. I'm being schlepped around. by an emotion, by an instinct, by an addiction, by a craving, by a habit, by a ritual, by somebody else, by okay, let's go here. In this life, there's no let's go. The question is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'll call upon him. In the world of tikkun, when a person eats, there's a confrontation of two universes, the world of tikkun and the world of toyu. But the unique idea here is that tikkun needs toyu as much as toyu needs tikkun. I need my primal self as much as my primal self needs me, because that's who I really am. Deep down, toyu represents the true, intense energy of life, but it needs the sublimation of tikkun. And when tikkun meets toyu, it has the ability to sublimate the sparks of toyu back to their original source, which gives a whole new energy, momentum, and chiyus to tikkun, which it doesn't have on its own, because over there the energy is much more diluted and much more compromised. And that's the kavanas ha'achila. That when the kelim of toyu, the vessels of toyu which are broken, are sublimated through the world of tikkun, which incorporates them and brings them back to their original source. So because the shirish of toyu is deeper than tikkun, Va'ela malachim Hashem malchu beretz Edom lifnei meloich malach lebnei Yisrael. It's deeper than tikkun, so therefore it gives a whole new oir, a whole new light to tikkun, and that's why the person has to eat achilas tzarich gavaya, and not only the adam down here, but also ha'adam ha'elyon al aloy al lechem levado yichya ha'adam ki al kol moitze pi Hashem yichya ha'adam, the adam ha'elyon, who so to speak gets a whole new oir from the toyu elements that are embedded in the food, and that's pshat v'achalta v'savato v'irachta es Hashem alekecha. That is actually a bracha, a flow of energy kivayachal that comes to Hashem alekecha, which is what tikkun gives into toyu, what toyu gives into tikkun, which is lechem min haaretz, all bread that comes from the earth. However, there's another type of bread called heavenly bread. It's not the bread that you bring out from the earth, the bread that comes from heaven. Lechem shel haman. K'meshakosov hineni mamtu lechem lechem in hashamayim. The expression in Parshas Beshalach is, I will rain on you bread of heaven. What an interesting expression. I'm going to rain down on you bread from heaven. V'hu Inyan b'chinas tala de bedulcha. The Torah describes in Parshas Ba'aloischa the man that it's ka'ein ha-bedoilach, like a crystal. Bedulach is crystal, so the Zohar calls the man tala de bedulcha. Crystals of dew, or dew crystals. Crystals of dew. It says the man came down in the morning with a layer of dew over it, a layer of dew under it, which is the source of yes, the map on the bread, and there under and over the bread, and because the Lechem Mishnah is of course a zecher to the double portion of man that used to come down on Friday, double portion for Shabbos, and that's why we have not one loaf of bread, but two loaves of bread during the meals of Shabbos, and you have the layer on top and the layer under it. Vatal shichva satal, the Zohar calls the man tala de bedulcha. Bedoilach again is crystals, little crystals. Kamashakasav vatal shichva satal, the dew cover the man. What does this mean? Hinei aman yared b'schus Moshe. The Gemara says, Sechta Tainis, the man came down the schus of Moshe. He had three components. The clouds were in the schus of Aaron, the water, schus of Miriam, the Eirish of Miriam, and the man was b'schus Moshe. When Miriam and Aaron died, so the clouds disappeared, the water disappeared, that's why they needed water. That's why there was a war against the Jews. And it all came back ultimately b'schus Moshe. But it begins, the man is b'schus Moshe. What is Moshe? Moshe, we already learned in a previous maimer, Moshe says, V'nachnu ma, in Parshas Beshalach. What are we? When the Jews attacked Moshe and Aaron, he says, V'nachnu ma ki salinu aleinu. What are we? You look at me and you think that I'm a dictator, I'm a tyrant, I'm your king. He says, I'm just a conduit. Moshe's ma shebechachma. Moshe represents chachma, but he represents the quality of ma in chachma. Chachma is made up of two words. Chav ches mem hei. Koyach ma. The koyach of what? Moshe represents ma of chachma. V'hainu etzem shem ma. The core of Shem Ma, which as we said is Yud Kei Vav Kei when it's spelled out fully with olives. This is higher than the ray of intelligence that comes into emotions in order to direct them. Moshe represents Moichin, not the way it directs the midos, but the way they are essentially. That's why by Moshe it says kvad peh or kvad lashon. He was difficult. He had a difficult time communicating. Both his mouth was heavy and his lashon was heavy. His mouth and his tongue. So the Zohar says a very fascinating interpretation. When Moshe tells Hashem, I'm not a man of words. Kvad peh or kvad lashon anochi. What are the two expressions? Kvad peh means I have a heavy mouth. Kvad lashon means I have a heavy tongue. They both apparently mean the same thing. I can't talk. Doesn't mean that Moshe had a stutter like some say. Doesn't mean that Moshe just had an inability to communicate. Some people can't communicate. Doesn't mean that Moshe had a speech impediment. There's different interpretations. But the Zohar says, Kvad peh hainu Torah shabal peh. Kvad lashon hainu Torah shabiksav. Kvad peh relates to Torah shabal peh, the Torah that comes through the mouth, the oral Torah that comes through the mouth. Kvad peh. Kvad lashon is Torah shabiksav, which is written. Torah shabal peh is, of course, a Torah that wasn't written. It's a Torah that was given over verbally and orally from mouth to mouth, from teacher to student to teacher to student, generations after generations, until Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi felt the need to transcribe halacha in Mishnayos, and a few hundred years later to transcribe all of halacha in Gemara, Talmud Yerushalmi, Talmud Bavli, all of the Midrashim, etc. But it's essentially a Torah of the mouth. Torah Shabbat is, of course, a Torah that's written, not on the mouth, but it's written with the lashon, the language on parchment. So Moshe says, you want to send me to take the Jews out of Egypt and to give them the Torah. Kvad peh, I am not suitable for peh, Torah Shabal peh, but kvad lashon also for Torah Shabbat. What does this mean? This the Zohar says. So the Alter Rebbe explains. Very heavy idea here. Ki shoirish Moshe haya b'bchinas Penemeyus Abba. The shoirish of Moshe's neshama is what's called in the language of Nister, the language of Kabbalah and Chassidus, Penemeyus Abba. Abba means a father, versus an ima, a mother. Penemeyus means the Penemeyus of the father, which means the inner core, not the outer, the inner. Abba is always a euphemism for Chachma. Ima is always a euphemism for Bina. Chachma is represented by the seed, the semen of life that the father contributes. And Bina is represented by the mother who takes the seed, integrates it, and it fertilizes within her body, and it develops into a fetus. And over 9 months, it becomes a full-fledged fetus, Be'ezer Hashem, and then there's birth. In the process of the human soul, you have the father, which is Chachma, you have the mother, which is Bina, and you have the child, which is emotions. The child is only born from the mother, not from the father. But without the father, you don't have a spark, you don't have the sperm, you don't have the seed of life. So you need the father to contribute the seed to the mother, who then ingests it and develops it into an embryo, which hopefully develops into a full child, which is then given birth, which then comes out into the world, and that's the world of midos, the world of emotions that come from the father and mother. So in Sifrei Chassidus and Kabbalah, Abba is Chachma, and Ima is Bina. What's the relationship between Chachma and Bina? Chachma is always the epiphany, the spark of inspiration. What do they call it? The light bulb moment. You know the light bulb moment? Aha! I got it! What do you get? I don't know. I got it. Explain. I don't know. I got something good. An idea. It's a spark. It's inspiration. But with that, nothing will remain, because it comes and it goes. It's like a father without a mother. He shoots out, men shoot out ideas, biologically and spiritually. Yoyde kachetz, as the Gemara says, shoots like an arrow, but that's it. Where does it go? As we know, it could go levatala, which is a serious thing, if it goes for waste. With a wife, she takes that creative energy, biologically, but it represents biology is always a mirror of spirituality. The two are not detached. The world of biology, especially the birds and the bees, and the world of spirituality are really the same world. It's just a reflection. It's a mirror. And therefore, she takes that creativity, hopefully, if she doesn't destroy it or knock it away, knock it down. But she takes the creativity, absorbs it, and turns it into something real. But for this, they have to work together closely. Huh? Yeah. Abba and Ima have to work. In a person, what does this mean? Chachma is the spark, the barak, the epiphany, but Bina is taking the idea and making it into something, developing it, explaining it, elaborating it, literally fleshing it out. Mamash, taking the seed and fleshing it out. The seed has in the microscope, it has everything, but now you got to flesh it out. And you got to flesh it out to the point that there are toenails, there are fingernails, every limb, every organ, every tissue, and that's what happens in Seichel. Chachma, you're learning a shtickle Gemara, it's very, very hard. You learn it again, you don't understand it, and then suddenly, boom, you have an insight, but that insight is always a few words, it's very brief, now you have to develop it, elaborate on it, explain it, decipher it, and then you can write it down, you can give it over, you can teach it. If you don't have Bina, the Chachma just goes away. It's mamish like a lightning. If you're in a pitch dark desert, and there's lightning for a few seconds, there's a tremendous brightness, but if you don't do anything with that, it's going to go away as fast as it came, and it's all over. Edison said, all invention is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Chachma is inspiration, Bina is perspiration, without schwitzen. But in Chachma itself, you have what he calls Penemeyus Abba. There's Chitzoneyus Abba, there's Chitzoneyus Ima, and there's Penemeyus Abba. What is this? He says, Shoyrish Moshe b'chinas Penemeyus Abba k'moshu be'etzem. It's Chachma the way it is in its own core, essentially. L'mayla meha'aretz ha'moichin b'midas shel ha'torah. Kosher, posel, taher, tameh, zakai, chayev. He's beyond the ray of moichin, the way it expressed in the midos of Torah. Ulekach amar kvad peh uchvad loshen amoich. When we learn Torah, Torah is of course moichin, it's wisdom, but it's moichin that directs behavior. Every sugya, this is kosher, this is posel, this is tahir, this is tameh, this is good, this is bad. This is mutter. We just learned Hilchah Shabbos. This is mutter. This is asr. This is benat Torah. This is b'divrei seifrim. This is lechatchila. This is b'diavad. This is a chumrah. This is a kula. This is zakai. This is chayev. It's all based on wisdom. It's all based on principles. It's all based on ideas. But that's called ha'aras ha'moichin, not moichin be'etzem. It's the intelligence that guides emotions and behavior. It's the intelligence that leads. It navigates direction. It's the GPS of emotions. That's not called Penemeyus Abba. That's called Chitzoneyus Abba. Everything has two dimensions to it. The Penemeyus of it, the Chitzoneyus of it. The Penemeyus of it is who you are vis-a-vis yourself. The Chitzoneyus is who you are vis-a-vis others. In other words, how you impact others. It's two separate things. One is called your external self, and one is called your internal self. Your internal self means who you are vis-a-vis yourself. No one even knows about it. Sometimes not even you. The Chitzoneyus self is who you are you vis-a-vis others. Meaning, how do you impact others? What you mean for others. Why is that called external? Because really it's very external. Because it's only that aspect of you that means something to others. For example, imagine somebody once said he wants to die, so he should just be able to hear the obituary. Because he wants to hear what people think of him. How do you think of yourself, and how do you compare it to what people think of you? If people have to talk about you, and you could actually witness it, most of us don't have that opportunity. Right? They say there was a Yid who died, he wanted to hear a hesped, so he went into the box, and they started to do a hespedim. So somebody said at the hesped, he never ate broccoli, he never ate spinach, he never ate cauliflower because of worms. So he gets up and he says, and coleslaw too. He wanted to be Moshe, make sure, don't forget the coleslaw. But what people say about you, how much does it have to do with you? Even if it's emes what they're saying, even if it's completely honest, it's that aspect of you that they are gaining from. Let's say you have a teacher, let's say you have a Rebbe, let's say you have a leader, let's say you have a father, an inspiring figure. So when people talk, they talk about that aspect of what they get from him. What does that have to do with his essence? He can't live off that. So there's your Penemeyus is who you are vis-a-vis you. Your Chitzoneyus is who you are vis-a-vis others, and that's called your external self. Your external self means that aspect which other people can gain from and appreciate from. Now that can be tremendous and momentous, but legabe, your Penemeyus, is called Chitzoneyus. Reb Mendel of Vitebsk, Reb Mendel Haradaka, the Priya Aretz, he was a Talmud of the Maggid of Mezrich. His Talmidim said, could you show us a tzaddik nister? Could you show us a hidden tzaddik? He says, yeah, me. They said, you're not a nister. We all know you're a tzaddik. He says, as achun vei, as mein Zitkes wird gewen, wiffel ihr weist. You hear? Woe unto me if my righteousness was as much as you knew it. That's my Zitkes. In other words, I'm a tzaddik nister. You don't know who I am. Tzaddik nister doesn't mean somebody that doesn't know about. He lives in an attic for 99 years, right? Oscar Wilde once said, such a cynical line, you can almost think he was Jewish. He said, the best feeling in the world is to do something anonymously, and then everybody finds out. It's the best feeling in the world. We touch at tzaddik nister, you live up in an attic somewhere for 69 years, right? And then you call in the Chevra Kaddish a few hours before you die, and you give up says Ashma Yisrael, and then for hundreds of years they talk about this tzaddik nister. The Kotzker Rebbe said that the Yetzer Hara flackert even when you're dying. So they asked him, what's the Yetzer Hara when you're dying? Well, what do you want to do? He said, the Yetzer Hara comes into you and says, Rebbe Yisrael, don't just die. There's a minion around here. Go out with a bang. Psakut Shema Yisrael. Close your eyes. Say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then they'll write on your matzeva Yotzon Nishmasoi Betara when he said Hashem Echad. So he said that's Eicha Yetzer Hara. Die in class. Don't just die. Yeah? Let everybody talk about how you die. What was his point? His point was, okay, this is the Kotzker Rebbe. Tzaddik nister doesn't mean you're on an attic for 90 years. You can also be tzaddik nister could be a big tzaddik that we know who he is, but he's still a tzaddik nister. Why? Because you don't know who he is. You know nothing. Real people, what's the difference between real people and not real people? A lot of big people. I once heard this, interesting, it was such an interesting description. I heard this from somebody who worked for many years with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So I asked him about his experience. So he said, usually with big people, the closer you get to them, the less you start respecting them. From the outside, they're very impressive. Once you move into their house, you see how they get upset, and you see how they deal with the refrigerator, and you see b'chlal, how they act. Yeah. And when you get very close to them, it's the hardest person to respect you is your wife. She sees everything, you know what I mean? It's so hard. You see up close, far, yeah. Person gets dressed, puts on a nice tie. It's showtime. He says sometimes you see a person, the closer you get to them, the more you respect them. That's a different type. Why? Because you see a different type of greatness. Fakert, the closer you get, the more respect. So usually, the world of Penemeyus is not the world of Chitzoneyus. It's a whole different world. So Moshe says, you want to send me to give them the Torah. What's the Torah? The Torah is Moichin. But it's Ha'oras HaMoichin b'midas. All of Torah is Moichin the way it comes down Lamais. That's what he says. Ha'oras HaMoichin, kosher, apostle, tar. There's a nafka minna. It's wisdom, the way it has implications, ramifications. Even a sugya of Gemara that's theoretical, meaning it's never going to happen, it might not happen in Gashmis, but it's a concept of halacha. It relates to action. It relates to behavior. And it relates to emotion. Moshe says, Kvad peh in Torah Shabal peh. Kvad losh in Torah Shabiksav. Lekach amagamkin, mi anoichi. When Hashem said, I want to send you, his first line was, who am I? V'chiyotzi es b'nei Yisrael mitzrayim. What's pshat? Kiloimar. Ki oitzi es b'nei Yisrael lekabel es. Why not? Listen to these words. Ki lo hoya yochel lahashpil es atzmei lamata li es nimshach imenu shayrish ha-Torah. Moshe could not see himself with the ability to humble himself, to lower himself to the point that from him could come shayrish ha-Torah, the source of Torah. It couldn't come from him. Kvad peh or kvad lashon anoich. not Torah Shabbal Peh, and not Torah Shabbat. V'heishav le'akadosh baruch hu, anoichi eyem picha. I will be with your mouth, meaning, anoichi misha anoichi, hu atzmus ein sof baruch hu. Anoichi is I, no names. This is Hashem's essence. Shulamayla mayla mebchinas Abba. He's even beyond Abba, which is Chacham. Umayla mata shaven etzlai. The higher and the lower are identical. Ulafan of Yisbarach kachashecha ka'ira mamash. L'gabe him, darkness is like light. Ulakach yorad haman b'schus Moshe. Ki shoyresh haman ulamayla misarusa de l'sata. You thought Toya was hard. What's pshat that Moshe couldn't talk? What is he saying here? We learn Moshe was a kvad, but he had the speech impediment. He couldn't talk. Why couldn't he talk? So there's a story with the coals. So that's the physical Inyan. But everything physical comes from something spiritual. Moshe not only couldn't talk, he couldn't even reveal Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbal Peh. Why? Not because he didn't understand it, because his shayrish is actually from a much higher place. So he says he can't even become the source of Torah. He can't give Torah. Why can't he give Torah? That's what the Zohar says. Kvad Peh or Kvad Lashon. Sai Torah Shabbal Peh, even Torah Shabbat, which is higher than Torah Shabbal Peh, he can't give. Why not? Why not? The words he says here is because he's Penemeyus Abba. Etzem Shema, Masha B'chachma. Moshe is also Mem Hey. The beginning and the end is Mem Hey with a Shin in the middle. So therefore he can't. And Hashem has to say this whole vart that he's going to explain why he could. Anoichi Eyem Pech. It's coming from Anoichi, which is higher even than you. It's higher than Abba. Generally speaking, any element of hashpah, of giving, is always a compromise of truth. Always. Why? Because in giving, the question is, what can I do for my audience? It's never a question of where I really am and what I'm really holding by. The Baal Shem Tov once said that when somebody speaks or teaches, he's like a broom. What happens to a broom? You have a kitchen floor, it's dirty. You sweep up the floor. Where does the dirt go? Disappears, goes into the broom. Baal Shem Tov says that's what a teacher is, that's what a speaker is. Everybody is supposed to come out clean, and he goes home dirty. You understand what that means? You don't understand what it means. You don't do it. It means something very deep. The broom makes the kitchen clean, and the broom itself goes home dirty. In other words, what means life for others is death for him. What he gives to others and cleans them up, for him, he becomes much more filthy from this. Why? Because he takes it all in. So you have a little bit of a tragic situation. Because the real communicator, what is he doing? He's trying to clean up people's energy, people's light. He's trying to give them light and clean up the mess. Clean up toxicity. Where does it go? Where does it all go? It gets absorbed. So it's actually a very big yirida for him. They say there was once a woman who came to a Rav, and she spoke to him for 3 hours about her problems. At the end, she says, "You're brilliant, and you're also a miracle worker." The Rav says, "Why are you saying I'm a miracle worker?" She says, "I came in with a migraine headache, and it's gone. You made it disappear." He said, "It's not gone, it just went to me." It's not gone, nothing is gone. Yeah. There was a therapist, I read Dr. Plotkin, he was a big therapist, psychiatrist, and psychoanalyst. So there was a new guy who came in for the office, a new resident. So he sits the first day, and they walk out of the office together, 6 o'clock at night, they walk out. So Dr. Plotkin says, "Nu, how was your day?" He says, "I don't know how you're doing this for 50 years. He says, "What's the problem?" He says, there were 8 patients here today. And everyone tells stories, and you have to listen and concentrate. He said, I'm platzing. One day I'm platzing. He said, how are you doing this for 60 years, listening to people 60 years? But the Blatt said, who's listening? Who asked you to listen? You nod your head and you take a check, right? And you tell them, I'm sorry, I understand your pain. This is what insecure people go through. That's it. You gave a diagnosis. Yeah. But all these anecdotes, it really points to one idea, and that is, the Baal Shem Tov said, it's not simple, you go and you communicate. Communication is a form of Mesiras Nefesh. What do I mean it's a form of Mesiras Nefesh? It's completely going out of your space, going into other people's space, and asking not what you want to say, but asking what they need to hear. It's a whole different issue. It's a whole different thing. Ask not what you want to say. Ask what they need to hear. The Penemeyus says in Masechta Chagigah, if a Rav is like a Malach, you should learn Torah from him. If not, not. Im a Rav doimel a Malach Hashem tzvakas, yivakshu Torah mepiyu. If not, not. What's pshat? What do you mean a Rav is doimel a Malach Hashem tzvakas? The Penemeyus says an unbelievable word. Every teacher has to know this. It says the difference between malachim and neshamas is malachim are oimdim and neshamas are mahalchim. When asati lecha mahalchim bein oimdim ha'ela, the pasuk says in Zechariah, a neshama moves, a neshama grows, a malach stands stationary. In this world you can grow, you can transform yourself. Angels, they grow, but it's all in a predictable orbit. So he said, a Rav has to be doimel malach Hashem tzvakas. What says? I'm teaching Baba Basra. I'm teaching Baba Kama. I learned Baba Kama, the Rosh Hashiva learned Baba Kama how many times? Maybe 150 times. He has a classroom. What's his passion? To give us a deep pilpul to reconcile two Rambams. It's like Geshmakir Reb Akiveiga, Geshmakir Reb Chaim, Geshmakir Reb Baruch Ber, Geshmakir Reb Naftali, Geshmakir Reb Shmuel, whatever it is. Yeah, Geshmakir Reb Nochem, where you come from. So that's what he wants to do. The problem is the boys can't underzetz and can't Rashi. They can't read a Rashi like in many yeshivas. So what do Rosh Yeshivas do? He gives a pilpul mit hashagasayim, mit hanesivis, mit aktzos. It's a lebedik and freilich, but that's not what they have to hear. They don't even know what he's talking about. So a good Rav has to be a malach, an oimid, not a mahalach. You want to express yourself, you want to grow, but then you're not a teacher. Then you should sit and learn for yourself. If you're a teacher, you need to be able to be there for your students according to their capacity. So for you, it's a form of paralysis. You're actually restricting your brilliance and your creativity and your full expression of ideas because it's not what they want to hear, what they need to hear, or they're capable of hearing. You're actually going down to their level and repeating something which for you doesn't constitute growth. You're an oimid. It says, Rav doimel malach Hashem tzvakas yivakshu Torah. Such a teacher you learn from. Somebody else you're not going to learn from. You're not going to learn anything. He's busy expressing himself. What does this really mean? This really means all hashpah is a form of self-obliteration. Why? Because, you want to know why I teach? Because real communication means you have to completely suspend who you are and tune in to the soul of the people you're talking to. Now, in therapy work or spiritual work, you know this. It's all about listening. It's really listening to where the other person is and not treating them as your patient or somebody coming from your looking at them from your perspective, but really tuning into their world. And that's not an easy transition. It's a very tough transition. It's very easy it's very easy to get stuck over there. But the point is, real hashpah is always Chitzoneyus, not Penemeyus. If it's Penemeyus, it's not hashpah. It's expressing you vis-a-vis yourself. Chitzoneyus here is the idea that the person actually is asking how I am relating to you and what do I have to give you in order for you to be able to get what you need. And by definition, that means my external self. Not external in the terms of fake. That's not what external here means. External means in terms that it's not about capturing my full intensity as I am with me. It's not about that. Torah Kavayachal also has these two levels. Torah that we have, the Torah that we know, is a Torah that's called Chitzoneyus Abba, not Penemeyus Abba. Why Chitzoneyus Abba? Because it's God's wisdom, infinite wisdom, the way it's relatable to humanity. God tells me what to do. But Moshe was in touch with the core of wisdom. And with the core of wisdom is kvat peh, kvat loshen. It's kenisht. Not I don't want to, kenisht, I can't. I can't detach myself. I can't become a malach. I can't detach myself from that level of energy to be able to come down to a place where I can give Torah. Mi anoichi. Not mi anoichi as I'm a nobody. Mi anoichi verkehrt. Mi anoichi, I'm not the right person for this. Moshe couldn't talk because he was always listening. To talk, you have to stop listening. You know, when you're listening to something very intently and somebody says, what is he saying? What is it? But you know if you lose any words, you're going to lose it. Yeah. Shh. Tell me what he's saying. Once you finish listening and you absorb it, now you could start giving. When you're in a state of Kabbalah, you can't be a mashpia. In Hilchas Melicha, you have Aidi de Tarid Lamivla Loi Polit. When you're absorbed, you can't emit. It's two separate things. Why? Because when you're absorbed, you have to suspend yourself and just listen to that which is above. When you emit, on the contrary, you have to assert yourself and you become the teacher figure. So whenever you become the teacher figure, it's actually your lowest level. You understand? When you're a student, you're much more real than when you're a teacher. Because when you're a student, you're opening yourself up to something that is beyond you. When you're a teacher, you're becoming a source for something that is under you. So you actually lowered yourself to be able to become a mucker. When you're a Talmud, you're actually in a much higher space. When you're a Mekabel, you're in a much deeper place than when you're a Mashpia. Because a Mashpia means I'm the giver. Mekabel means I'm the taker. What am I taking from? I'm taking that which is higher than me. Moshe was always in that state. So he's kvat peh, kvat loshen. He can't talk. He can't communicate. And he can't be the shoyrish of Torah. Why? Because the shoyrish of Torah is the wisdom of infinity, the way it informs finiteness. But Moshe is plugged into infinity itself. Moshe Hayireh, because he's plugged into infinity itself, so therefore he can't be a shoyrish to give to finiteness. Because the whole Torah is the way Abba comes down into halacha. In other words, the way it navigates society. It's God's wisdom, the way I could relate to it and say, that's what you're saying. But Moshe is tuned into the core of the wisdom itself. When you're tuned into the core of the wisdom itself, it's to transcendence. He says, Kvat peh, this is nicht von mir. I'm not the wrong, I'm the wrong person for this. I'm the wrong person. Hashem doesn't argue with him, because he's right. Hashem doesn't argue with him. Hashem introduces him to another reality, which is going to be the reality he's going to be discussing. The reality we call the man, Lechem and Hashemayim. How do you give bread from heaven? Daf Samach Vav, Amud Beis, column 2, Samach Vav, Beshalach, page 131. Okay, this is not an easy shtickle here. This is a complicated shtickle. He went over from Lechem and Aretz to Lechem and Hashemayim. Lechem and Aretz was the first section of the Maimer. The second section of the Maimer is Lechem and Hashemayim, which is known as the Man. The third section of the Maimer goes back to explain the structure of benching. The fourth part of the Maimer goes to explain what Shabbos is. And after that, he comes to the end to go back to what Lechem Mishnah is. And the difference between Lechem Mishnah al pi nigla, thank you, and Lechem Mishnah al pi nister. Do you remember how we started? Now he's going to go back to at the end. So he starts with Lechem and Aretz, Toyu Tikkun, goes to Lechem and Hashemayim, goes back to the structure of benching, goes to Shabbos, and then back to Lechem Mishnah on Shabbos. So Lechem and Aretz was the whole idea of Toyu and Tikkun explored in the previous shiurim in the beginning of the Maimer. Then he begins the process of Lechem and Hashemayim, which is discussed in Parshas Beshalach. The Zohar calls it Tala de B'dulcha, the dew of crystal, and the Gemara in Tain is that the man came b'schus Moshe Dafka. And for this he explains something about Moshe Rabbeinu, who tells Hashem he's a kvad peh and he's a kvad loshen. he has a heavy tongue and a heavy mouth, which the Zoya, the Raya Mehemna, fascinatingly says, he has a heavy mouth and therefore he's not capable of communicating Torah Shebaal Peh. He has a heavy tongue and he's not capable of communicating Torah Shebiksav. And the way the Alter Rebbe understands the Zoya, the way he understands it is that because Moshe, to quote him, is Etzem Shema, because he's Etzem Shema, or what he calls here, Etzem HaMoichin, or Penemeyus HaMoichin, or Penemeyus Abba, all the words of Etzem HaMoichin versus Ha'oras HaMoichin, the Penemeyus versus the Chitzoneyus, he's not capable of lowering himself to the point that he becomes the shirish of Torah, the source of Torah, whether Torah Shebaal Peh and even Torah Shebiksav. Because of Moshe's unique soul, which is Etzem Abba, Penemeyus Abba, which is the Etzem HaTorah, not the Chitzoneyus HaTorah. Huh? So what does Hashem answer him? Hashem says, Anoichi eye impicha. I'm going to be with your mouth. Moshe says, Mi anoichi. I can't do this. He says, I'm going to be with your mouth. Who's anoichi? Anoichi, he says, is atzmus ein sof. It's the essence of the ein sof, which is even beyond Abba, it's even beyond Ma, it's even beyond Chachma, it's even beyond Etzem HaChachma. And therefore, the highest and the lowest are identical. Darkness is like light. And hence, because of Noichi Yayim Picha, you could be the one who gives us Torah. And hence, the man comes down b'schus Moshe. Because this is reflected in the man. Let's see further inside, where he explains more. Ki shoyder Shaman, the line starts Haman. Ki shoyder Shaman, hu lamayla misa risidul asat. The source of the man is different than Lechem in Haaretz. It's Lechem in Hashamayim. What makes this earthly and this heavenly? Literally, bread comes from flour that you knead with water, that you bake in the oven. And the flour comes from grinding kernels, which grow in stalks of grain, whether it's wheat, or barley, or spelt, or oats, or rye, the chameshes minei dagan, or essentially any other food, whether it's a bean, whether it's a fruit, whether it's a vegetable. This is all min haaretz. It's all from produce, from grain, fruits, vegetables, basically tzeimeach that grows from the earth, lechem and haaretz. The manna comes from heaven, lechem and hashamayim. When you think about it, however, one second, who is the one who created the whole process of lechem and haaretz? It's also heavenly food. What allows the wheat stalks to develop kernels that can be ground into flour, that can be kneaded with water, and then become consumed as lechem? It's ultimately also min hashamayim. It goes through the haaretz. The manna just comes down. But the truth is that the distinction is much profounder. It says, what's the distinction? It says, Hamanu l'mayla misarusa l'sata. The man transcends the hisoirus of the mata, the arousal of below. Shebisarusa l'sata, sarusa l'eila. Lechem in haaretz, the process is the arousal from below creates an arousal from above. What does this mean? Hainu, ki mebchinas habirurim detoyu nimshechu hamad me'oides etoyu. You know what Rosh Tevis hamad is? Nimshechu hamayin duchrin me'oides detoyu. From the birurim. Birurim always means from separating, selecting, refining, elevating toyu, you access the masculine waters. Mayin are waters. Dechar in Aramaic is zachar versus nukva, feminine. Mad versus man, mayin duchrin are the masculine waters. You access the masculine waters, meaning the flow, the energy flow, the spiritual orgasmic energy flow from the lights of toyu. We explained that's lechem in haaretz. The process happens on earth. Every piece of food, animal product or any gashmi, ultimately is rooted in a very, very deep place of energy. But it went through the whole nefillah that we spoke about, the whole breakdown that we spoke about. And therefore it's unrecognizable, and it needs the Adam who is cohesive and integrated and balanced and connected to the divine in a conscious way, to look at the Toyu and be mevarer it. And birur is always a struggle. By definition, avodah of birurim is an avodah of struggle, because everything is mixed. Mixed here doesn't only mean physically. Mixed means psychologically. When everything is mixed up with each other, basically to find the kernel of truth is difficult, because you have to chip away on all of the shells, on all of the layers until you get it. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle, first of all, to be able to identify it, and second of all, to actually separate it. Even if you identify it, to actually disregard that which you have to disregard, and embrace that which you have to embrace. Both are very difficult. The greatest work, internal work, is from the confusion, it's avodas habirurim, to be able to identify that which you have to identify, and to be able to actually do something about it. That's called birurim of Toyu. When you do that, what happens? You bring back Toyu to its original source, which is the oiris of Toyu. And remember, those oiris were much more powerful than the oiris of Tikkun. The problem is the oiris could not live in the kalim. The kalim were shattered and they fell down with all their sparks. And the oiris departed back to their source in the divine. Now, when you bring back the netzutzas, you re-access Mayin Duchrin, you create a Sarusa Delayla, you create an arousal from the lights of Toyu, and that gives Tikkun a whole new energy. V'achalta v'savato v'irachta es Hashem alekecha k'vayachol, your moisif bracha hamavrich, you create a flow in Havaya alekecha adam ha'elya. That's all Lechem in the Aretz. That's why it's called earthly, because it all depends on the avodah of earth. Avol Shoyr, the only ones who can elevate Toyu is down here. Avol Shoyrish Haman hu l'mayla. The source of the man is l'chatchila from above. This represents an arousal, a flow from above that is not created from the below. You have, just like you have in human relationships, sometimes the Yisayirus begins from one side, sometimes the Yisayirus begins from another side. And hopefully it alternates. In other words, there's interest on both sides. Sometimes there's only interest on one. That's the concept of Lechem in the Aretz, Yisayirus de l'Satan. Lechem in Hashemayim, Yisayirus de l'Eila. Rakadei b'chinas misha anoichi. It comes completely from anoichi, from me. K'shanimshach b'chinas Penemeyus ab b'chinas Moshe. Anoichi eyem picha. Hashem says, I, me, my essence will be with your mouth. When anoichi comes into Penemeyus Abba, which is ma, the Penemeyus Achon, which is Moshe, anoichi eyem picha. Ayideze yachal leida de lahashta lamata b'liyas lamata k'moishu l'mayla mamash. He tells Moshe, you can go down and you can go to the lowest place and remain as you were above. There's no distinction between Maila and Mata when you're connected to Anoichi. Anoichi, Misha, Anoichi is an expression in Zohar. On the words Anoichi, Hashem Elokecha, he says, who's Anoichi? So he says, the only thing you say Anoichi is, I am who I am. In English, they got it. Anoichi, Misha, Anoichi. I am who I am. Who am I? I can't tell you who I am. I am who I am. That's the best thing I can say about me. Anoichi Misha Anoichi. It's an expression of Zohar. I am who I am. I am what I am, actually. So when Moshe says, I can't do this, Mi Anoichi, the answer is, this is not me. And the reason is because he's higher than it, not because he's lower than it. He's higher than it. His neshama is not made for this. His neshama is not made for communication. His neshama is made for absorption. That's the whole distinction between Penemeyus and Chitzoneyus that we explain. That everything, you see, we live often in superficial realities. So we have to always expand our models. The one thing that you cannot coexist with Torah and Likkutei Torah is superficial definitions. It just doesn't work together. You know what I mean? He says that everything here is looking for pure truth. So therefore, what we call Chitzoneyus becomes Penemeyus. What we call Penemeyus often becomes Chitzoneyus. It becomes topsy-turvy. The definition of Chitzoneyus here is not bad at all. But basically, anything, the way it's defined by others is already Chitzoneyus. Anything that's defined by others is already not it. It's the external element of it. Why? Because it's the aspect of you that I can appreciate. In other words, it's the way I see you, I perceive you, I grasp you, I define you. That's called your Chitzoneyus. What's your Penemeyus? Your Penemeyus is the relationships of something vis-a-vis itself. but the way it's defined by others. In other words, the way it inspires others. Moshe Rabbeinu as a teacher is the Chitzoneyus of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's really the difference between a real leader and a pseudo-leader. Or I would say an ordinary leader and a great leader. An ordinary leader, his greatness is defined by his leadership. Real great leaders, their inner life is much richer than anything anybody knows about. In other words, the day they become ice leaders, their life actually begins, it doesn't end. For many people, they lose their leadership. Well, what now? What am I worth? They have this identity crisis. For the real leader, his inner life is always much richer than anything else, which is very fascinating. It's like he's most comfortable in his inner life. The whole leadership is like a compromise of his integrity, of his truth. It's a tzimtzum, exactly. Yeah. It's a verkehrt. Moshe, Hashem had to fight with Moshe to do it. It doesn't add to his personality. On the contrary, his inner life is infinitely richer.
Because that was the same as Hashem's compromise, what he chose to relate
Right?
to
Yeah,
us.
yeah, exactly. That's tzimtzum, yeah. And Moshe's time is not only I don't want to do it, not because I'm lazy, I can't do it. This is not what people need. Because the definition of leadership and communication is always to talk to people, not to yourself. It's not communication, it's communication with people. You have to be able to lower yourself and be in tuned to the reality of the person. Moshe says, kvat peh, kvat loshen anoich. And even Torah. What's Torah? Torah is chachmas Hashem, but the way it informs midos, the way it informs behavior, that's already called Chitzoneyus HaChachma. It's not basking in the infinite itself, it's gleaning from the infinite direction for life. And Moshe says, I can't do that. I can't glean from the infinite direction for life. That's already too much. I stay there.
That's the idea that Tommy said that the Lehavin cannot be a rule.
The what?
Some people ask, they want to take the Lehavin that he can.
I hear.
Because it's
He's higher. He's busy absorbing, not giving. So, Chitzoneyus here, Chitzoneyus doesn't mean, it's not a derogatory term. Chitzoneyus is nothing. Chitzoneyus here means, again, the way something, or a person, becomes a source of inspiration for something else, that's called as Chitzoneyus. The way I can appreciate you, the way I define you, the way you do something for me, that's your Chitzoneyus already. And that journey of you going out of yourself into a source of teachings or inspiration is a journey from your Penemeyus to your Chitzoneyus. And the Penemeyus is always infinitely more rich than the Chitzoneyus. Because it's the person vis-a-vis himself without any compromise.
You experience your Chitzoneyus without somebody else?
Yes, even Legabe yourself. The way I describe myself is already my Chitzoneyus. The way I speak about myself to myself is my Chitzoneyus, not my Penemeyus. Oh, that's a tough one. You have to stop speaking to yourself about yourself in order to know yourself. As long as you're telling yourself who you are, you don't know who you are. You're telling yourself who you are. You're like the audience. You're watching yourself. Okay, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. Huh? Or convincing, or you're convinced already. He's convinced already. It's usually you're not. You maintain it, yeah. You maintain it. You find proofs to everything you've been told. I'm this. You're just basically confirming. Huh? I mean the other way. Or self.
It goes both ways, good for good and for bad.
Yeah. Masochism.
How do you define the process of being when you're not thinking?
So how do you define the process of being? That was Moshe's struggle. Moshe was in the state of being. And he was being forced to go out of a state of being into a state of...
So that's not a chesurim, because if not, you cannot do chesed.
You're right. It's not a chisaron. But Moshe said, I'm not the right man for this. So what Hashem told him is, Anoichi eye in picha. There's something even deeper than etzem hachachma, and that's Anoichi. Anoichi is the essence, which is even beyond the etzem of chachma, the Penemeyus of chachma, the core of it. That's what he says, Anoichi misha anoichi legabehim kachashecha ka'oira. And therefore I will come into your mouth. And when I will come into your mouth, you'll be able to communicate, and your communication will still maintain the level of integrity and the level of Penemeyus that you would be without communication, when you would be simply in a state of being, in a state of absorption, where you don't have to surface as a source, because you could just be. Anoichi Ayim Picha. And that's represented by the man, which is not Isarusa de Leil that comes from Isarusa de Leil, Isarusa de Leil itself. And now he explains this a little more, and he goes in to he goes into new terminology here that we once learned already in the Parshas Noach Maimer. Those who remember will remember. If not, I'll also explain. He says as follows: Ki shoyresh haman hoya mebchinas akudim. The shoyresh of man comes from a reality, a world that we call akudim. Akudim means bound up, like akeda, akud. Sha'akud b'kli echad. It's an expression in Chaim from the Arizal, that all the lights are bound up in one vessel. Now, here comes the Alter Rebbe's imprint. Shebchinas iskalulus shebchinas akudim eino kemo iskalulus shebchinas hatikun. Don't compare the integration and unity that exists in akudim to the integration and unity that exists in the world of tikkun discussed earlier. Shesharshu olam habrudim, because the world of tikkun, the shorish is not olam hakudim, the shorish is olam habrudim. Shehu ribuy hakelim beischalkus kaven, because in tikkun you have multiple vessels and multiple channels, multiple kavim, lines, outlets, conduits, kavim. That's what makes it diversified and integrated, because you have so many, and you can't ignore the other because there's so much out there. Sha'oifen iskalalusam, how do they get along? Why they b'chinas bittul. They have a particular bittul, a humility. Meha'aras shei masha b'chachma, because of the ray, the glimmer, the light that comes from the name of Ma, Yudke Vavke. In Chachma, Shehi Ha'aras HaMoichin B'midas, it's when the Moichin inspire the Midas, Ayidei Slapshus Ein Sof B'Chachma, because Chachma has in it a manifestation of the Ein Sof. Mitam Shayidei Ha'aras HaMoichin B'midas, Miskalulim Gam Beis Havchem, K'moi Chesed U'Gvura Yachad. Because when Moichin shine in the Midas, they take the opposites, like Chesed and Gvura, and they bring them together. Mitzat Chlishus Hamidus Mehamoyach Ashalet Al Alev, or Machlishus Hamidus Shalayi Nergasha B'Takfim Amohus. Because when you have the moyach that rules over the heart, it weakens the intensity of the emotion. So from being a primal, extreme emotion, it becomes a compromised emotion. It becomes a diplomatic emotion. It becomes a structured emotion, a balanced emotion. And chesed could create space for gvura, and gvura creates space for... Even if you're in a space of tremendous love, you can understand the art of discipline. And even when you're in a space of discipline, you still can appreciate room for love. You're not in a state of extremism, of toihu, where there's no room for anything else. No, moyach shalkov, the moyach tells the lev, you're a good guy, chesed, there's also others. Gvura, you're a good guy, but there's also others. Elu ve'elu. So lo yiyu nergoshim b'takvam uvus. Aval b'chinas ha'iskalus b'chinas akudim hu. But the integration in the world of akudim is different. Listen to this. Av gam b'yois ha'midas b'takvam. In akudim, the midas are in full primal intensity. Afal pikein misachdim miskalulam yachim. But in akudim, there's still one. Why? Because over there is a complete revelation of Ein Sof in the most perfect manner. And when you see the Ein Sof, there's no opposites. And there's no division.
So why wasn't there a shvira, or is this above the level of shvira?
Above. Listen to these words, because their intensity is not because their essence is intense. It's because the Ein Sof is revealed, and the Ein Sof is the perfection of everything, and therefore includes everything, so everything could be in its ultimate intensity, and yet not collide with anything else. That's why the Kabbalah calls it akud, bound up in one vessel. It's not like in Tikkun, where the unity comes because there's so much diversity, and everybody learns that they are not the only ones. Over there it becomes cause of weakness. In Akudim, the unity comes because everyone is actually in its fullest intensity. And and because it's in its fullest intensity, and it senses its source in the Ein Sof, therefore it gets along with everybody else.
Wait a minute. It's not just above Tikkun. It's above Tov also.
Of course.
But he's mentioning it's above Tikkun, but it's above Tov. Because above
No,
Tov.
yes, of course it's above Toyu. But he wants to bring out that the Hiskalulus of Akudim is very different genre than the Hiskalulus of Tikkun. That's the Chiddush,
Right.
that contrast.
Told there was no Eskalus.
Right, in Toyu there's a Shvira. There's a Shvira. What is he saying here?
I thought we said Torah was not, there wasn't a shvira yet. I thought we said Torah, that they're
The
each
shvira took place in Torah.
a thing to itself, and it can't accept the
Right.
difference in
So therefore when the Midas came out, they fought.
So this is a level before Torah.
Before Torah.
Meaning they're undifferentiated.
They're undifferentiated, right.
They're each unique within that
Yes, I'm going to explain now. You're very good. In the story of Yaakov Avinu with the sticks, and at the end of Parshas Vayetze, it's usually when most kids shut down in Chumash forever. When you go through those sticks, you know, Akudim, you don't know what hit you over there with the sheep and the water. So one of the expressions that's used there constantly is Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim. Literally, Akudim means bound up, Akudim, which is basically a line that connects, a line that encircles the sheep. Nekudim is polka dots, Nekudim. What's Brudim? Brudim is, I guess, could be translated as integrated. Integrated. What's Pshat integrated? Integrated is, you would have dots, but there would be a line that connects them. In Eitz Chaim, the Arizal says that Yaakov Avinu wasn't just busy with sticks. Yaakov Avinu was, the Zohar says that that's how Yaakov put on tefillin. The whole avodah with the sticks was basically avodah of Hanachas tefillin. It was a different type of tefillin. But the point there is that Yaakov was accessing energy. He was tuning into energy. What energy? Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim. Three worlds. There's the world of Akudim, the world of Nekudim, the world of Brudim. In the Lashon of the Balatanya, Akudim precedes Toyu and Tikkun. Nekudim parallels Toyu. Brudim parallels Tikkun. Whenever you hear in Chassidus, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiyah, that's all post-Tikkun. Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiyah, it's all post-Tikkun. It's already Olam HaBrudim. Olam HaNekudim is before Atzilus. And Olam HaAkudim is even before that. Akudim, then Nekudim, then Brudim. And this is all post-Tzimtzum. Now, let's just define the three that are Negeya here that he's defining here. Why is it called Akudim? We explained many times that all of creation is a marriage between Oiris and Kalim. Energy and containers. Everything in the world. There's the Oir, the passion, the energy, the creativity, and the Kali, the container. The facilitator, the administrator, the implementation of it. That's Oir and Kali. There's usually 10 Oiris and 10 Kalim because there's 10 spheres. Chachma. There's the Oir of Chachma, the Kli of Chachma. The Oir of Chesed, the Kli of Chesed. The Oir of Gvura, the Kli of Gvura. Everything has Oiris and Kalim. In Olam HaAkudim, there's no differentiation. Eser Oiris, Akudim B'Kli Echad. It's bound up in one vessel. There's one vessel that contains 10 lights, which is difficult to understand, because if it's 10, so why is there one vessel? By definition, every light has its way of expressing itself, but that's Akudim. Next level is Nekudim. Nekudim is there's 10 lights and there's 10 vessels. But as he said before, it's Zeh Tacha Zeh. Each one is completely independent. And that's why there was a Shvira there. First of all, the Oir and the Keli couldn't get along, and each Oir couldn't get along with the other one. Each Keli couldn't get along with the other one. Because each one, as he said, was infinitely extreme and primal, and its Toikuf was so powerful. Vayimlach, Vayamas, Vayimlach, Vayamas, Vayimlach, Vayamas. All 7 kings of Toy who die before the next one takes over, they can't coexist. Vayimlach, Vayamas, these are the Malchi Edom Lefnei Meloich Malach Lebnei Yisrael. What's missing here? What's missing here is Tikkun. Now there's going to be a new world. The new world is the world of Tikkun, where there's also 10, but there's integration. The Oiris are smaller, the Kalim are larger, and there's unique respect for diversity. What he calls here is Chalkus Kavim. Everything is diversified. Everything is fleshed out. There's details and nuances. And each Keli understands the value in the other. Why does it understand the value in the other? Because its own intensity is weakened. It could see a different perspective. And because it could see a different perspective, it can coexist. Not only coexist, it could be enhanced by the other. I enhance you and you enhance me. As we discussed, the jigsaw puzzle, the symphony, the art. It's the art of symmetry, the art of synthesis, the art of integration, the art of diversity, the art of kibitzelam elakim asa es ha'adam. It's male and female together. I am not in the image of God when I am me. I encounter God in the face of the stranger, in the face of the one who's not me. That's the power of tikkun, which he says has ha'aras ha'moichin. What he says here, moich shalat al alev, an awareness that informs emotion. So there's 10 oidus and 10 kalim, but here the kalim are large, the oidus are mitzumtzum in the keli. They're not so primal, they're not so intense, they don't collide, they don't destroy each other. This is a world of balance, a world of correction. It's called tikkun. Tikkun means a world of litakein. Toyu is chaos. Ha'aretz oisa soyu v'avoyu. And the way he teaches ha'aretz oisa soyu means, by definition, everything in Eretz is toyu, everything in Geshem is a result of toyu. But there's a big difference between akudim and brudim. That's a big difference. And that's what he's saying. The man, Lechem and Hashamayim, was rooted in Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the b'china of akudim, versus Lechem in Haaretz, which is a synthesis of tikkun and toyu, which is brudim and nekudim. What's the nekudas achilek here? What's the difference? The difference, the key difference is, I mean, if you see these few lines are very... what's called in the terminology of the Balatanya profound haskalah. There's a very deep idea that he's saying here about the different type of iskalalus. But I want to focus on one line, so you should see his words. 5 lines from the end of the paragraph, he says, in akudim lo shayach beis hafchim v'lo yischalkus ki b'chines ha-toikev shalahem einu mitzat toikev ha-mahus ela mitzat gilui oirein soif. Toikev means intensity. Toikev, takev, strength, right? Toikev, intensity, very power. Its power is not because its essence is powerful, it's because oirein soif is revealed. Akudim, yeah. Versus brudim, where there's also unity, but that's because there's weakness, bittul and chlishus. In akudim, it's mitzad gilu yorein soif v'toikef hashleimus shabahem. So you have intensity in akudim that's similar to nikudim, but there's no breakage. Why not? We just explained, and we know this in human relations. If you're in a marriage with your primal emotions, there's no negotiations. When I'm angry, and you know such people. When they're angry, you don't talk to them for 7-8 hours. If you can go to Hawaii for a few weeks till he sobers up, ma toivo ma noyim. You don't want to see them. And sometimes people will tell you, I didn't have my coffee yet. You don't want to talk to me. I'm still. I need 3 hours to land. I'm not. Sometimes people are like very, they're like instinctively honest with themselves. Most of us learn at a very young age, especially Ashkenazic Jews, to suppress instinct. We learn to be proper. I was the other day at a bris. Somebody had twins. They came from Uzbekistan. Yeah, they were sitting on the floor and singing and jumping. The babies came and everyone was jumping to the ceiling. I'm looking. I say Ashkenazim would commit suicide before they would do this at a bris. Everybody's standing as right. Everybody's proper and make sure the tie is this. And these Yidden from Uzbekistan, they were jumping and hollering and screaming and dancing. So I said, it's interesting what the Enlightenment did to Ashkenazic Jewry. Amazing. It turned them into sophisticated people, but sophistication also kills something. That's what he says. There's a chalishus, there's a weakness. Yeah. I'm not here judging sociological, making sociological judgments on Sephardim versus Ashkenazim, but there's a certain passion that you see by Sephardim that Ashkenazim don't have, in terms of emunah, in terms of hergish, in terms of a lot of things. If you have an Ashkenazi married to a Sephardi, it becomes very interesting usually. Okay, so, what? So he says in Akudim you have even more toikev, but there's no shvira there. It's actually one keli. There's even more unity than brudim. Why? Because it's not toikev hamuhus. It's toikev ein sof. What does this mean? Before we explain it practically, which you always have to explain it, you first have to always understand the concept. And then the concept you bring into practicality. And here, I'm going to make a ha'ara about Penemeyus and Chitzoneyus. What's often so difficult about teaching Torah and Lakutta Torah is that it's a sefer that's kulei Penemeyus. And yet, if you only stay by the Penemeyus, tragically, sadly, most people would lose interest. Because when we come to a shiur today, most people, maybe some present company excluded, but not everybody, most people have one question: what's in it for me? That question is a question of Chitzoneyus, not of Penemeyus. It never allows me to hear what the person is saying. All it allows me to do is hear what is in it for me. What does he have to tell? I want to be inspired. I want to be happier. Now, this is not blaming or judgment. This is just a description of reality. But that means that sometimes I could sit my whole life, and all I took was the Chitzoneyus of the Alter Rebbe, nothing else. All I heard was, this is a good word. It's a good word. I like it. My Shabbos is better. My Yom Tov is better. Beautiful. But realize that this is Chitzoneyus. It's how I'm using you for me. Nothing to do with Penemeyus. On the other hand, this is what Moshe Rabbeinu was complaining about. He didn't want to teach Chassidus. He wanted to be there. He just wanted to be there. He didn't want to communicate Chitzoneyus. What's Penemeyus? Penemeyus means, I'm not looking what's in it for me. I want to know what you actually have to say. And you know what? I may not find relevance for 65 years. Noch besser! Verkehrt. The less relevance, the more true it is. The more abstract. The more pure. Right? The higher. The fact that I'm like, I don't know what's this doing for me. Okay, so you're actually getting lost in it. Good. So you're getting lost in it. So you're getting lost. But I know we don't live in that world. We don't live in that. We live in a world where, frankly, most people want to be inspired. They want to be moved. People today are stressed. They're anxious. The greatest thing you can do for people is help them navigate their stress and anxiety and find a place of peace and comfort and wholesomeness with themselves, with God, with their spouses, with their children, and with the universe.
That's it.
And with the extraterrestrial creatures as well.
Can that be described, the difference between the Rambam and other Poskim about discussing Luchot that's not the guy?
Yeah, that's the Rambam. The Rambam especially did not make a sefer of halacha l'maisa. That was the uniqueness of the Rambam. The only sefer of halacha that includes everything in its idealistic space. The Rambam is the only one who has all the halachas of Mashiach. The Rambam has all the halachas of Man Beis Hamikdash, and he treats it with the same intensity. In Shulchan Aruch, it's halacha l'maisa. What a Jew has to do today. The Rambam, he'll treat Hilchas Shabbos, and the Karbonis that weren't around by the Rambam already for more than 1,000 years, the same exact intensity. There's no difference.
Pesach, he talks about how to bring Pesach to the table.
And Rabbi Yoshe Ber says that the Rambam suddenly forgot that he was living in Egypt. That's what he says, yeah? He says he forgot where he was living. Suddenly he's in Yerushalayim. Hilchas Chametz U'Matzah, how he starts describing the Karban Pesach, the 4 kashas, the 5 kashas. You know what I'm talking about? That shiur. So, okay, yeah, I mean, it's a dogma. Here I'm talking more in terms of Avodas Hashem and Ruchnius, but it's a different, Penemeyus is different than Chitzoneyus. Penemeyus is different. I'll tell you a deep Maisa. It's a Chassidish Maisa though, so you have to have a certain sensitivity to it. You know what I mean? It's an Edel Maisa. I'm telling you. So if you don't understand it, it's fine. It's an Edel Maisa. I hear this from the Bala Maisa. It brings out something. It brings out something very deep. Just to give you a little context so you'll appreciate the Maisa. The Lubavitcher Rebbe had 3 types of letters that he wrote. He had what they call in the jargon of Chabad a michtav prati, a michtav kloli, and a michtav kloli prati. Now before you get confused, I'll explain to you what it is. It's not complicated. Michtav prati means an individual letter. You write him a letter, he writes back an answer or a letter, which he wrote probably 200,000 or 300,000 mastama over his years. Not non-stop, every day, hundreds of letters. Today there's already, 35 volumes, and it's only letters that are not so private. Anyway, that's a private letter to someone. Then there was a michtav klali. Michtav klali means a few times a year, Rosh Hashanah, before Pesach. He would send out a general letter, like a message that he felt was relevant, addressed to the Jewish people. And then there was a michtav klali prati, meaning it was for individuals, but it was generic. What's pshat generic? A few times a year, let's say Hanukkah time, the Rebbe would sit down and write down a message, some thoughts. A page or 2 pages, like about Hanukkah, about something in the Parsha. It was an idea in Avodas Hashem, an idea in Yiddishkeit, an idea in Chassidus, an idea in Halacha, whatever it was. People who sent him letters, he would often send them back this letter which had a blessing at the end, and usually he would address it to the name, sometimes add a line at the end or in the beginning, I got your letters or whatever, but this was more of a generic letter that went out. How many people got it? He could send it to 500 people, 5,000 people, whoever it was. He wanted to send them this message. So his secretary once told me, Rabbi Groner once told me, that there was a Yid who sent the Rebbe a letter. So again, if it was a personal question, you have to know to do this. The generic letter wouldn't help. But if it was more a toichendik letter or just notifying, so this Yid wrote a letter. So the Rebbe tells Rabbi Groner, send him the michtav klali prati. Send him this letter. So he sends it to him. So he gets it. He comes to the office and he gets it, and he makes a sour face. So he says, "What's the sour face?" He says, "I wanted
Personalized.
I wanted a personalized letter. I don't know what he's sending me in." I just remember growing. I don't know why he decided to tell this to the Rebbe. It's good he did, because you'll hear the response. So he tells the Rebbe that this Yid is upset. The Rebbe said, "Why is he upset?" He said he wanted a personal letter, not. So the Rebbe said, sometimes you overestimate a person. I'll say it in Yiddish and then I'll translate. It says, "Ich gemeint, als wollt gewollt wissen, was ich liegen. Will nicht, ich will ihm schicken a persönliche Brief." I thought he's a person who would be interested to know what I am into these days, what I'm thinking about. He's not. I'll send him an individual letter. You typhus? That's the difference of Penemeyus and Chitzoneyus. You would think an individual letter. No, he says, "I'm writing to you. You want to talk about this? We'll talk about this." The generic letters. He wasn't writing a response to somebody. He was writing what he's thinking about. I thought we have a relationship. Will wissen was ich liegen. He wants to know what I'm into. So I sent it to him. I thought that's what he wants. Will nicht. Fine. Gesundheit, I'll send him a personal letter. Right? You would think it's the other way. More Penemeyus, it's more personalized. No, more personalized means actually I'm stepping out of my space. I'm tuning into your space, which is fine. That's what you want to talk about. But what about sometimes asking yourself not what you want to hear, but actually what the other person is saying? Imagine in a marriage if you could do that. Right? When your wife speaks to you, not to hear what she's telling you about you, actually what she's saying, not with a psakavana, not lishma in the literal interpretation. Lishma kipshuta. That's the definition of Penemeyus. It's a whole different Inyan. So Penemeyus means tuning into the purity of something without any motive, even a motive of inspiration, which is basically how it's being defined vis-a-vis me. And the same is true in Torah. You could learn Torah, right? You want to know halacha, you want to have inspiration, and then there's Torah itself. But even Torah itself that we learn is already the ha'ara of Torah, because it's the way Torah informs life. It's not the core. And Moshe says, this is not me. So Hashem says, Anoichi eya impicha. Once Anoichi will be with your mouth, then we can come down. In order to, and that's what the man is. The man comes b'schus Moshe. In order to explain this, he says, for this we have to understand the chiddush of Olam ha'akudim versus Olam ha'brudim. The achdus of akudim versus the achdus of brudim. It's a different achdus. One is an achdus because there's a lot of kalim. And everyone gets along with the other because they're weakened. What makes them weak? He says, Moyach shalit al alev. Awareness makes primal emotions weak because it gives you perspective. It tells you relax, you're not the only animal in the jungle. This is what's called negotiations. This is political science. Humanity has struggled with this. How do you create a society that's normal when everyone has conflicting interests and you don't have Ishas Re'eyu Chaim Bloi? What do? Socialism was one way of dealing with it, right? Capitalism, democratic systems, monarchies. It was all different types of systems. The Roman system, the Greek system. How do you create systems? You have 1 million people living together. Everyone has interests. How do we live and let live? And yet work together but not work together? And the truth is, it's very tough. One of the greatest questions in politics and in running a country is what's the balance between Yachid and Tzibur? The rights of the individual versus the rights of the collective. It's one of the most difficult challenges. Most of us, we already grow up in a country, and America is a Malchus Shel Chesed, is a lovely country, despite all the challenges here, but it's
This is Gufa what a lot of the Supreme Court stuff revolves around.
yeah, exactly. One of the biggest questions, First Amendment, etc. What's the rights of the Yachid and what are their limits? Do they have limits? America was based on the Yachid. That was the Chiddush of America. For the people, by the people. The monarchy, the Meluch, is based on the Melech. It's not the Yachid. And the Melech, Kevayachal, is the Tzibur. Communism and socialism, there's no Melech. There's only a Tzibur. There's only the people. There's nobody else. Everybody is equal. The only problem is some are more equal than others, as we know. Many of our communities are based on that way. There's only the tzibur. There's only the people. But some are a little more equal than others. Right? So that's a very, very powerful question. What are the limits of the Yachid? What are the limits of the tzibur? A lot of Yiddishkeit, a lot of Hilchis Malachim, Hilchis Sanhedrin, Hilchis Melchama, a lot of the halachas of tzedakah all revolve around this question. What does Yiddishkeit embrace? Do we embrace the ethos that the individual will reign supreme, or no, the tzibur reigns supreme, and you have to surrender? Does the yachid surrender to the tzibur? Does the tzibur surrender to the yachid? In many situations, people struggle very heavily with this. They grow up in a very collective atmosphere where there's only community. And one day they look in the mirror and they say, did I ever exist and will I ever exist? And do I exist? And it creates a lot of pain. A lot of pain. Because nobody ever told me that I exist. They always told me that you are a screw that keeps the bookcase together. That's your function. And the moment the screw goes away, huh? Mikra Toiv, you're a screw. But Mikra Hara, what are you? You're not a screw, but the opposite. Okay. You're not the hammer, you're the nail. Okay, one of the two. So this is the question. It really originates in these three worlds. Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim, as we will Be'ezer Hashem explore.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.